came to an end last night, and I want to run through just a few things that we think we learned from this preseason. And so I will start with you, Acho. Give me one thing you learned in this preseason.
First things first, Daniel Jones is a dude. We were clowning him ever since he got drafted number 6 overall to the Giants. Everybody was clowning the dude. He's resilient. He said, okay, y'all can laugh in my face. I'm going to go ahead and throw these touchdowns on y'all. In the preseason, 29 of 34. That's 5 incompletions, 2 touchdowns. You tell me if that's good or not. 85% completion percentage. He is a total boss out there. Excited to see his future.
Very impressive. I agree with you completely. Whatever it translates to, he couldn't have done more if you had asked him. Meanwhile, Dominique, what is something you learned in this preseason?
Pass interference is a scourge on society. It continues to be so. It's annoying. Like plays like this where they call pass interference was completely wrong and unnecessary. They also have added the replay, which is going to make things even worse. I think even I hate defensive pass interference, but we've even had awful offensive pass interference calls this year. I know everyone remembers this game where this got called offensive pass interference. They reviewed it, and then it got somehow upheld as offensive pass interference, and it's terrible. We were on the last 2 years, we were down from 15% down on pass interference calls, which is good for the league. You help it keep going. We're going to add this review. We're going to be back up, which stinks.
And then one more. Give me one more big picture takeaway, Neek.
Yeah, that preseason is kind of pointless.
Kind of?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for guys who are trying to make a roster, I think it's important to put that film out there for other teams to see. But other than that, it's kind of pointless because the coaches seem to hate it. The players seem to hate it. The fans certainly don't love it. Many of them who get season tickets are forced to buy them. It's a problem.
Greeny, can I one-up that? Preseason is totally pointless.
Hold this thought because I'm going to put 90 seconds on the clock. I want to make this a topic. I want everyone weighing in. Give me 90 seconds on the clock on that. I've been covering this sport forever. I've never seen them treat the preseason as completely meaninglessly as they did this year. Pick up your thought.
I'm saying it's totally worthless. Here's why. I was the guy trying to make the roster spot. It wasn't until my 3rd year in the league that I realized, Greeny, the roster is 90% decided before the preseason ever starts. In the NFL, the only love language that matters is money. Yeah. So if you're an undrafted guy or if you're a low drafted guy, you're probably not going to make the team assuming the starter does what he's supposed to.
Sanchez, what do you think?
It's the joint practices now. That's where all the onus is. That's what teams really look at. Those become your games. Look at the Rams. They don't play any of their starters.
Here's the problem with joint practices, to the point Acho just made, and Nick, you brought it up. No one pays to see those.
Right.
You don't sell tickets to these joint practices. They got to figure out something, Dominique, and you know how that stuff works.
Nah, they're discussing potentially adding one team on each side to the playoffs, which will add another playoff game and not another week to the season, and that could possibly make up the revenue. But the problem there is if you take away 2 or any preseason games, that's more money for the team, the in particular team. The teams don't split up the TV money in the same way they split up the local game.
I get that, but I'm hearing they're more likely to add to the playoffs than the regular season. Would we be totally against adding another regular season game?
Yeah.
Totally against it.
I mean, it's hard to do that. As we see players like Andrew Luck and Gronkowski walking away from the game, it's really hard to rationalize adding more football to the season.
I understand that. I don't love the idea of expanding the playoffs either. Listen, sometimes if something's not broken, don't fix it. Right now, everything is working just fine. Let me give you another topic here. We got the 2 rookie quarterbacks that were drafted that we don't expect to start right when the season begins. You got Daniel Jones. Again, he was sensational in the preseason for what that's worth. Dwayne Haskins, they put a lot on his shoulders in this preseason. He had some good moments and some bad. So I'm going to put some time on the clock here for this one. How long are we going on this one? 90 again. Let's go 90 seconds on the clock. Which one will start an NFL game first, a regular season game, and which one should start a regular season game first? Acho.
I'm saying Haskins will start the season first before Jones. Not because Haskins is better. I think Haskins' ceiling is higher. But Gruden hasn't known what he's doing at quarterback for several years now, dating back to when RG3 got drafted in 2012. Then you drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. Didn't make any sense back then, but it did somehow pan out for him. Dwayne Haskins will thrive in the fact that Washington is an utter mess at the quarterback position. Haskins will capitalize.
Mark, a lot of this comes down to the success of the team. Will either of these teams have the kinds of seasons that will keep their starters entrenched?
I think Eli plays out the season. Sorry, Neek. I also think that the dark horse is, it's not binary in Washington. I think Colt McCoy could play before maybe either of those guys.
I think Daniel Jones should play sooner because, in part, Jake Gruden, the reports are Jake Gruden didn't even want Haskins at that spot.
Right.
I think Dwayne Haskins is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, given the information we have so far. So I think they both should play and should play early. But to your point, Greeny, Washington has a really tough defensive line, and they have a decent defense. They might be better than.
So here's the thing I need to get to. We just had a 90-second conversation about how totally meaningless the preseason is. And now everyone wants Daniel Jones to start because he looks so good in the preseason. So, Acho, which is it?
He walked you right into that.
The trick is that we gravitate and we eat the meals that we're given. And so the only thing we have to ingest right now is the preseason. And so everybody saw Daniel Jones good.
But does it matter? Does it matter that he was good?
It matters to me. Yeah, that's all we have. Before we had any games, we thought he was terrible based on no football.
All right, let's get to something you touched on a moment ago here. One more topic, and that is the premature retirements, if you will, of these two star players. Andrew Luck shocking the football world last weekend, retiring at the age of 29. This is just months after another superstar player walked away at the age of 29, and that was Rob Gronkowski, who you may have seen this week get very emotional in a press conference talking about that decision. So I'm putting 90 seconds on the clock again, and I will start with Sanchez this time. Will we ever see either of those two guys playing an NFL game again?
I think we see Gronk on WWE. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see them both playing football. I'd love to see Andrew feel better in a year or a long, 2-year hiatus and come back healthy. But I feel like Andrew's one of those guys who either does that or he moves to Europe and buys a soccer team or something. I think that's kind of how he is.
Do you think we will see Andrew Luck again?
I think we see them both back and both soon because I think it's an intensely personal decision for these guys. And I don't know either of them well enough to know, but based on what I've heard about Andrew Luck, is he genuinely loves this game.
No doubt.
And I think getting a little time away will allow you to kind of rekindle that love, and he's the guy who's going to come back. And Gronk pretty much, after saying how much football hurt him, he pretty much insinuated at the end of those interviews that he would be back at some point. He said franchise drafters should draft him and stash him on the roster and keep him.
I don't think we see Gronk. I think we see Luck. Gronk, I think he has nothing left to accomplish. Luck, on the other hand, he still has so much left to accomplish. He still has so much left out there. I think, Greeny, the piece we're missing is Luck wasn't going to be ready for week 1 anyway. I think everybody's been so offended because they're like, Luck retired on us, and he was supposed to be our starter. If he's retiring then, and somebody brought this to my attention, he probably wasn't going to be ready for this season, or at least to the halfway point. So he'll probably take a year off, recoup, and then come back.
It'll be interesting to me. It will come down to physical ability. Rob Gronkowski was beat up about as badly as any football player I've ever seen. That's why I don't think he will come back. Luck, I don't know where he will get himself back to, but that's something to watch. That's the NFL story as of this morning. Now we get to the huge college football game that'll be played tomorrow night. We're talking about national championship implications in August. Number 11, Oregon. Number 16, Auburn. It's the weekend's only matchup between ranked teams. FPI gives Auburn a 53% chance to win. It features a stark contrast in quarterbacks. You got Oregon's potential top 10 pick, Justin Herbert, could easily be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. On the other side, Bo Nix, who becomes the first true freshman to start an opener for Auburn since 1946. And it's a big game for the entire conference of the Pac-12, which has lost 15 of 17 against ranked SEC teams. An Oregon win could set up a playoff run for the Ducks, who will be the FPI favorites in each of their final 11 games right after this, and actually would lift the entire conference. I want to ask you quickly about Herbert in particular. So much hype surrounding him. What does he need to do to live up to that?
He has to have a solid, consistent senior season. You watch him last year, flashes, excellent at times, but then you're like, what are you doing at other times? We need to see consistency from week 1 all the way through, hopefully, the college football playoff.
Through a quarterback's eyes, what do you see in Justin Herbert?
I have a unique vantage point on this. I saw Matt Leinart come back for his last year at USC, and he took command on that field. He was a coach in between the white lines. He was an absolute stud out there, and he commanded that team. I want to see that from Herbert. I want to see him go into this Auburn game knowing there's a couple plays that aren't going to work out. Throw the ball away. Move on to the next down. Show me that you're that super senior. Prove to me that you're the top quarterback in this class, and I think he can be.
He's the kind of guy, if you just look at the way he's built, that teams are going to talk themselves into during the process next year. I still think, right now, if I had to handicap it, I think he'll be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. Meanwhile, as everything sort of gets going for real here, I have not gotten your teams, the teams you believe to be the Final Four standing for the national playoff.
Let's talk about it, Greeny. I got Clemson, that's obvious. But how about Georgia? I think they upset Bama 3rd time's a charm. I think they make it to the playoff. Then Utah, the Utes. Sanchez and I have been trying to drive this home. And then lastly, I think Oklahoma represents the Big 12 out of as a 4th team rounding it all out. Now, people are looking at me crazy, people, Greeny, including my guy Neek here. It's not even a hot take. It's an educated take. What I mean is,
white hot take.
If Utah goes undefeated, which they should be able to do because their hardest game is at Washington late in the season, then they're an undefeated Power 5 team. We constantly talk about most deserving versus the best. Bama is clearly going to be one of the best 4 teams, but an undefeated Pac-12 team is the most deserving. That's not a hot take. That's just common sense. If Utah wins out, how are you going to exclude them from the playoffs? Bama just lost a freak linebacker in Dylan Moses, and that's why I think Georgia has the.
See, it's a very interesting question because let's put either Alabama or Georgia in that position. If those 2 teams run the table undefeated all year long, the loser of that game has 1 loss. Does that team get in over an unbeaten Utah?
I don't think they do. I think you got to go with the unbeaten team. I think you got to go unbeaten.
That would
my
be
dog
something.
Sanchez.
Tomfoolery
That's why I
is
rock
what that
with him.
is. That is foolish.
You would put in Bama.
Because it's so late
One
in the
lost
year.
Bama over undefeated Utah.
But when you
in the
lose that
Pac-12.
late, it leaves a sour taste in everybody's mouth.
I
It
get
did
it.
last year.
Look, if it's an unbeaten Oregon with a win over Auburn, I think that's a different conversation.
Absolutely.
An unbeaten
That's fair.
Utah could be an entirely different thing. Meanwhile, we'll remind you, this game is on ABC tomorrow night. You will see the Heisman hopeful Justin Herbert leading the 11th-ranked Oregon Ducks against number 16 Auburn with all of this and more on the line. It's Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern. It's on ABC, and you can see it live on the ESPN app. All right, we're making a habit of this, and frankly, I am delighted. John McEnroe is back. Coco Gauff set the world on fire last night. She was so good, and the excitement level is off the charts. We'll talk about that and more next. Get Up on ESPN.